For 16 months, the government has banned evictions. So a lot of people aren't paying rent. But many landlords are facing financial ruin, and it could have long-term consequences for the poor. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Back when the pandemic first hit the U.S., Congress adopted the first stimulus bill, officially known as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act. And here's an image of what society would be like if Congress put as much thought into what goes into laws as they do coming up with clever acronyms. President Donald Trump signed the CARES Act into law in March 2020. It included an eviction ban, or moratorium. That means landlords can't kick people out of their property for not paying rent. It was meant to last 4 months. Until the end of the pandemic. Remember how optimistic we all were a year and a half ago? 2 weeks to slow the spread. I miss knowing what hope feels like. The eviction moratorium was meant to prevent a housing crisis. Tons of people lost their jobs and couldn't pay rent at the time, thanks to all the government lockdowns. But it didn't mean rent payments were forgiven or reduced. A moratorium policy merely delays the threat of eviction as renters continue to accumulate debt. It temporarily delays the threat of financial ruin while you continue to rack up insurmountable debt? Oh, so it's basically like a credit card. The Moratorium Platinum Card. Never get kicked out of home without it. But 4 months went by and there was still a pandemic. So the moratorium on evictions was extended. First, President Trump extended it with an executive order. Then, the Centers for Disease Control extended it, citing public health reasons. And then, the CDC extended it again, and again, and again, and yet again. And then, just when you thought you were finally seeing a consistent policy from the CDC, they were like, nope, we're done. Why did the CDC have this power in the first place? Because if your eviction moratorium lasts more than 4 months, you're supposed to call a doctor. But after more than 16 months, the eviction moratorium finally expired last week on July 31st. And then people started to freak out. Many called on the Biden administration to extend the ban to save Americans from being evicted. Back in June, the Biden administration said it would not extend the moratorium after it expired in July. Instead, the White House called on Congress to extend the ban. That was at least partly due to a Supreme Court ruling on a case at the end of June. The Alabama Association of Realtors, along with other plaintiffs, had sued several U.S. government agencies because they claimed the CDC did not have the legal power to issue the eviction moratorium. Now, the D.C. District Court actually agreed with the plaintiffs. The court said the CDC did not have the legal authority to impose a nationwide eviction moratorium. But at the request of the federal government, the court said they would grant a temporary delay to their ruling, known as a stay. So the CDC could keep issuing the moratorium. Then the plaintiffs appealed to the Supreme Court to get rid of the stay. The Supreme Court denied their request, but only because the eviction moratorium was about to expire anyway. Instead, the Supreme Court said clear and specific congressional authorization via new legislation would be necessary for the CDC to extend the moratorium past July 31st. In other words, Congress would have to pass a new law. And that Supreme Court ruling is one reason why the White House said the CDC wouldn't extend the moratorium, and that it was up to Congress now. Although the White House had already said it wasn't going to extend it again even before the Supreme Court ruling. The problem is, the White House reminded everyone it wasn't going to extend the eviction ban just 2 days before the ban expired. Did President Biden forget about it? No, why would you think that? After the Biden administration said again that they would not extend the ban, the House of Representatives scrambled to pass a new law to extend it just before they went on break in August. But it didn't happen. Republicans were unanimously against an extension to the eviction ban, and Democrats didn't have enough votes within their own ranks to keep it going. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said it was because the vote was last minute and that Democrats didn't have enough time to build a consensus. Makes sense. Who can get anything done in only 16 months? I'm already drafting my dinner plans for January 2023. Pelosi also used this as fuel to blame Republicans for leaving children and families out on the streets. And then, reminding us how we still live in an upside-down world, progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was like, no, let's not blame the Republicans.
We cannot, in good faith, blame the Republican Party when House Democrats have a majority.
Everybody knew this was coming.
Yes.
We were sounding the alarm about this issue. The court order was not yesterday. The court order was not Monday. The court order was about a month ago. We had financial services hearings about it. Members were ringing alarm to the administration about it. There have been public statements about it, asking for all of us, White House and Congress, to move on this sooner. The fact that this statement came out just yesterday is unacceptable. And we have members within our own caucus threatening to go on vacation and imperiling the lives of millions of people is unacceptable.
You know she's serious when she busts out the karate chops. So AOC had repeatedly asked the Biden administration to do something, and the Biden administration did nothing except issue a statement at the last minute reminding everyone that it wasn't going to do anything. Representative Cori Bush joined AOC in denouncing the Democrats for going on vacation, i.e. taking their normal summer recess. She camped on the steps of the Capitol in protest.
I'm dirty, I'm sticky, I'm sweaty, I still have on what I had on last night. This is how people will have to live if we don't do something. 7 million people, 6 million, 11 million, how many ever it is, they deserve their human dignity, and they deserve for the people that are paid to represent them to show up and do the work to make sure that they have their basic needs met today.
Dirty, sticky, sweaty, and lacking human dignity? If Congress doesn't act fast, millions of Americans are going to be forced to live like they're at Coachella. But it turns out being disgusting actually works. Because yesterday, the Biden administration announced it would extend the eviction moratorium yet again, this time through October 3rd. Yeah, the goal is to protect renters, yada, 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 but also to quell a rebellion among angry Democrats who blamed the White House for allowing the previous eviction ban to expire. But instead of Biden issuing a standalone executive order, this updated eviction moratorium is being issued, as before, through the CDC. But wait, didn't the White House say they couldn't legally extend it again according to the Supreme Court? No. You see, this CDC eviction moratorium is different. Technically, this time the eviction moratorium only targets areas that have experienced substantial or high levels of COVID-19 transmission. But that currently covers more than 80% of U.S. counties. And as the Delta variant spreads, that could grow. But of course, without the eviction ban extended, renters could face some immediate problems. According to a study by the Aspen Institute, as many as 15 million people are at risk of eviction. Nearly 50% of those who are behind on rent anticipated they would be evicted within 2 months after the ban expires. Evictions may even accelerate COVID transmission by making social distancing more difficult. And that was the whole justification for the CDC to extend the moratorium in the first place, that evictions could cause a public health crisis by spreading disease, just like Coachella. According to the Progressive Center for American Progress, last week's end to the moratorium will trigger the worst eviction crisis in U.S. history. As long as you don't count the eviction of Native Americans. So why isn't everybody on board with extending the eviction ban? I'll get to that after the break. Welcome back. The nationwide eviction moratorium has been extended to October 3rd. Renters had originally been required to make up any missed payments. In some states, they'd even have to pay their landlords late fees. But now, that's a problem for another day. Turns out there's still plenty of credit left on that moratorium platinum card. The arguments for extending the eviction moratorium are obvious. It allows struggling families and people with medical problems to stay in their homes.
And I think it really should continue because we're going through another cycle of COVID. Now we got the Delta variant out, and a lot of us, with our health problems, we're out here at risk. If I can't even be without electric because I have breathing machines. Where am I going to go and plug in my breathing machine at night?
A lot of people that are facing eviction are very much in the process of not knowing what to do and trying to figure out where their kids will go to school in the next couple of months if they're going to be evicted.
If only canceling rent were as easy as canceling someone who said something mildly offensive on Twitter 12 years ago. But there are some problems with extending eviction bans. For one, it's been hurting landlords and property owners. Not all landlords are like this. About 72% of all rental properties are owned by mom and pop landlords. For example, homeowners who rent out part of their house to cover the cost of their own mortgage, or small business people who own 1 or 2 extra properties they rent out. Some landlords look like this. Forget rent, I want to give them a hug. And for many of these mom and pop landlords, property-related expenses can consume more than half of their property income. Under the eviction ban, these landlords continue to pay mortgages, taxes, insurance, and maintain the safety of their properties for tenants with less, or in many cases, no rental income. And it's important to remember, not all renters look like this. Some look like this. Imagine housing this for free. Continuing the eviction ban unfairly shifts economic hardships to the backs of housing providers who have jeopardized their own financial futures to provide essential housing to renters across the country.
There's been no safety net provided that was focused on the landlord's needs. It's been focused on avoiding eviction of tenants.
Property owners shortchanged some $21 billion nationwide, many not able to weather the storm.
And according to my landlord, these economic hardships over the last 16 months are the reason he hasn't been able to fix the leak in my roof for the last 5 years. According to the Brookings Institution, a liberal think tank, a moratorium on evictions could cause ripple effects that further hurt local economies. And the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, agrees. Some landlords may delay their own mortgage payments, negatively affecting the owners of those mortgages. Banks, credit unions, investors, institutional shareholders, and even taxpayers. A lot of landlords will also increase rent in the future to recover some of the money they've lost or to hedge against the risk of the government doing another eviction moratorium, which is terrible. But it's better than the usual reason landlords increase rent. No reason whatsoever. Plus, prospective renters may find themselves subject to increased security deposits and tighter credit checks. And fewer affordable housing units may be constructed as a result. Because if the government won't let building owners replace tenants who don't pay rent, who would want to build new low-income housing? Mad scientists looking for humans to experiment on. That's who. Do not enable them. There's also the question of whether these eviction bans were legal in the first place. Several court cases have found the CDC eviction moratorium unlawful, including that original DC District Court case I mentioned earlier, which said the CDC overstepped its legal authority. But now the CDC has extended the moratorium again, despite multiple courts specifically saying they do not have the legal authority, including the Supreme Court. And it's unclear how the court will respond now. What is clear is the new extension is just going to push problems into the future. So are there alternative policies that could work better for landlords and tenants? One solution would be for the government to give people, including landlords, cash. That's actually what the Biden administration has been trying to do with $47 billion from the Emergency Rental Assistance Program.
And landlords should seek that money. Rather than seeking to evict, they should seek that money. It's in their interest as well.
The problem is Biden's team has struggled to build a viable federal-local funding pipeline. Makes sense. Biden isn't nearly as gung-ho as Trump was when it comes to laying pipe. As for reimbursing landlords, the $47 billion Emergency Rental Assistance Program to date disbursed only $3 billion, about 7% of what was supposed to be a crisis-averting infusion of cash. So the federal government is so incompetent that even when they want to give people money, they screw it up. This is like if you ask Santa for a puppy, then on Christmas morning, all you found under the tree was half a tail and an eviction notice. Even if landlords eventually get government cash, they may forever be less willing to rent to low-income people at low prices because of the way they were treated by government policies. Unless the government steps in and forces them to, which for renters and landlords alike could wind up being unacceptable. So what do you think? How can we solve this eviction crisis? Leave your comments below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.